Welcome to Recap Diary. Here is the recap of the movie Passengers released in 2016. The Avalon Starship, carrying 5,000 passengers and 258 staff members, embarks on a 120-year voyage to Homestead 2 at the beginning of the film. Jim Peterson, a mechanical engineer, awakens early after just 30 years due to a defensive system breakdown. Jim gets post-hibernation syndrome. When he wakes up, he goes inside the auditorium, expecting other passengers to give a lecture as an introduction to colonial existence as he tries to get used to his new existence aboard the ship. He is by himself now. Jim is perplexed to learn that the hologram is of no assistance and that he is on his own. After leaving the theater, Jim searches for information and, most importantly, any sign of life. When Jim visits the flight stewardess's office to beg for assistance, he once again finds no one there. He searches the command bridge as well in an attempt to locate the captain, but he is unable to locate anyone leaving for the observatory. Jim had the grim revelation that he woke up too early and will reach Homestead 2 in 90 years. Jim sends a $6,000 message to Earth informing them that something went wrong with his sleep pod, and he receives his first response in 55 years. Jim walks to the bar to get drunk after losing all hope. The following day, Jim attempts to mend his hibernation pod and acclimate to his new life of loneliness. He can't get the hibernation pod fixed. Rather, he returns to the command bridge, which is locked, and makes another unsuccessful attempt to force the door open. He visits the bar to get a drink and converse with Arthur, the android bartender. Jim informs Arthur that he will pass away on the ship from old age. Arthur gives him insightful counsel on how to get the most out of a predicament. Jim experiences depression and considers ending his life by jumping into space, but he ultimately decides against it. Jim sees Aurora hibernating in her pod as he rushes outside. Jim finds out about her and watches her passenger video footage. Though Jim assures himself and Arthur that he'll forget about it, he is terrified that if he wakes her from her slumber, he'll trap her with him on the ship for the rest of her life. Jim wakes her by opening the pod. He wakes her up, hides the tools and instruction book, and heads to the Grand Concourse to see her. They make their introductions. Jim informs Aurora that they are all alone and that they woke up earlier than everyone else. After wishing Aurora a good night, Jim informs her that he has already tried everything and nothing has worked, despite her desire to return to hibernation. Telling Arthur that Aurora woke up because of a problem, Jim instructs him not to inform Aurora that he awakened her. The two shared breakfast together the following day. Jim says he tried everything and nothing worked, giving up hope of ever hibernating again. Aurora suggests that perhaps there are other methods to get back inside the hibernation pods. Aurora starts journaling about her shipboard adventures. She declares that she and a stranger will spend the remainder of their lives together on the ship. When Aurora interviewed Jim after documenting her own shipboard experiences, he revealed his desire to move to Homestead 2 in order to start over and establish a new life. They play games, drink, and talk about their life goals as time goes on, and finally, their friendship grows closer, more private. One evening, Aurora is invited to supper by Jim. Jim learned more about Aurora's life during dinner, including the fact that her father passed away when she was just 17 and that he continued to write about his life after the meal. Jim takes Aurora into space with him. Together, they slept through the night. Jim and Aurora start dating. On her birthday, Aurora then writes about their shared existence. Jim tells her there are no secrets between them and shows her his enormous red sun, indicating he will pop the question. By mistake, Arthur revealed to Aurora that Jim was excited to meet her. Jim had woken Aurora awake on purpose. Aurora found out. When Jim tells her the truth, she becomes upset and confronts him about it. Arthur is attacked and abused by Aurora. Despite his apologies, she stays away from him. The ship's diagnostic system is experiencing another malfunction. Aurora discovered Jim's new tree on the Grand Concourse while strolling around. Jim finds himself abruptly stuck in the elevator as it malfunctions. There are also issues with the meal dispenser. Jim yanks open the elevator door with Aurora and makes off. Abruptly, a voice over the speaker asks, "Who planted a tree on the ship?" Jim discovers the deck as he dashes to the Grand Concourse. After rousing the three, Chief Gus Mancuso takes over. Jim and Bridge, mentioning how long he's been trying to get in. Chief Gus saw that he could not find out because the ship's diagnostic system contained no data. What was the issue? Jim and Aurora were told to assist Gus in repairing the ship. Jim and Aurora walked up the decks to sync data, and their first chore was to dock their slates and data ports. When Gus finished his rounds, he walked down to the hibernation beta and checked on the pods. Jim follows up with Gus. Gus discovers that Jim's pod malfunctioned because a clock chip on it burned out. This also indicates that Jim woke Aurora up on purpose. Jim acknowledges this, claiming he went back to the ship's command bridge because he was lonely. Several systems on board the spacecraft abruptly shut down without warning, as Gus found out. He continued to cough as well. The three decided to take a nap after Aurora observed their coughing. Gus continued to cough up blood as his condition worsened. The ship's gravity motor failed, causing a loss of gravity as Aurora walked to the pool for a late swim. As Aurora tries to break out of the water bubble, she nearly drowns, but the ship's gravity is restored when the gravity drive self-reboots and comes back online. When she eventually finds oxygen again, Aurora swims back up to the command bridge. Gus and the others discovered that the ship was struck by a large object, which resulted in system malfunctions. As a result of system malfunctions, the mission will eventually fail completely, and all of the crew will perish. The trio collapsed because they had to figure out what went wrong. They surmise that the defective pods are the most likely cause of the issue and are not deterred. Before they can begin, Gus puts on his uniform, ready to die, and hands Preston and Aurora his wristband, allowing them to access every part of the ship and solve any issues before they even start. Things go wrong very quickly when the engine begins to fail. Arthur is even behaving abnormally, smashing glass and hurting himself. Despite Aurora's best efforts, he continues until Preston takes away his power, at which point he shuts down. As they search the main engine compartment, they find that the asteroids have punched multiple holes into Avalon. Aurora nearly gets sucked out of the ship through one of the holes, but Preston, who is also fighting the doors jamming, gives her a tablet, which she uses to cover the hole. Impressed, Aurora notes that the temperature has begun to rise. As he rises to investigate, he discovers that the main reactor has also been harmed by the asteroid and that the exhaust vent is also malfunctioning. Preston attempts using the manual override to correct things, but it doesn't work. Preston is aware that going outside and fixing it is the only way to save the ship and other people's lives. As he gets dressed, he hands Aurora the wristband. Preston approaches the door with Aurora, and they share a moment before he puts on his helmet. As Preston is climbing the exhaust vent, Aurora tells him to return to her, since she is unable to remain alone on the ship. When Aurora returns to the reactor to attempt the manual override once more, she discovers that the handle is too hot. Debris from an explosion pierces her arm. While he attempts to keep the vent open, Preston instructs Aurora to try the manual override once more. Knowing that Preston could perish in the fire, Aurora refuses. They dispute, but Preston won't give up. He begs her to do it while sobbing. When Preston does his part and Aurora pulls the lever, it works, but Preston's lifeline breaks and he is flung into space with nothing to grab onto. They've punctured his suit too. Unaware of what's going on, Aurora rushes to grab a spacesuit and grabs Preston by the lifeline. She drags him to the auto dock, where Preston is pronounced dead after failing to seize him. Using Gus's wristband, Aurora modifies the programming and instructs Autodoc to revive him. Aurora is happy to see that everything has returned to normal on the ship when Preston makes it through. Preston informs Aurora that if he had utilized the Autodoc, he could have used the override feature to place Aurora back into hibernation. The only issue is that one of them must wait on the ship by itself because the other cannot hibernate. Preston extends the invitation to Aurora. Rejecting it, Aurora decides to remain with Preston. After 88 years, the picture rewinds to the Avalon, where the crew and passengers awaken to verdant surroundings on time. Aurora tells the crew about her incredible life with Jim. And that's the end of this recap. Make sure to subscribe, share, and comment. Remember, your engagement and support keep us motivated. Thanks for staying till the end. See you at the next one.